When you're thinking about layout for your design and composition, it's always important to pay attention to the background and foreground relationships. You always want to have good readability of your text and your images, and the best way to do that is to have a good sense of contrast between the values between your foreground and background. When I talk about value, I'm essentially talking about white, black, and everything in between, all the shades of gray. In this case, I've got a good little simple gallery of photographs. Each photograph kind of has a unique design challenge to it. I've got one picture that's very dark. I've got another picture that's very light. I've got another picture that's got a lot of mid-range values. And this picture actually has a blend of really dark areas and really light areas. Now, paying attention to the changes in the value is going to give a different impression for how these four images are laid out with each other. First off, if I've got a white background, white is very clean and fresh. It's inexpensive because you don't have to have ink printed on that area. But if you're using white, make sure you're using something that's more of a pure white and not something that's simply off just for the sake of design. If you're going to go white, go pure white and go 100% with that. However, if you're using white and a light image on top of it, sometimes it can be difficult to distinguish the edges of that particular area, especially if it's being printed at a lower quality. Some of the edges of this picture may get blown out, or edges on other areas that have light parts of their picture. To contrast this, let's give it a dark background. In this case, black is very bold, it's very sophisticated, and actually on screen it can lighten up a lot of the lighter images that are on here. Right now, even my darker picture, I can see that it's not 100% black in relation to the 100% black that I have for this edge. The downside with this, obviously, that you can see with white is that we're also going to lose some of the edge values of our darker pictures as well. In between, we can deal with some of the shades of gray. Let's tint this down to about 50% gray. Now with gray, it's the most versatile and accommodating of both light and dark images. Against a gray, you can add anything else that you need, and it tends to work with any image. So I can see the edges of it. Plus, I can choose the amount of gray that I want to work in. This is a 50% gray, but if I need it to be darker, I can make it darker or lighter, go lighter with this. The thing about it is we don't want to go so light that it looks almost white or so dark that it looks almost black. So choose between 50, and I tend to go as much as 70 and as low as 30 as far as my percentages for that as well. Some other great ways you can add contrast to your photos or even your text is by adding other forms of value contrast to their designs. For instance, if I was to select an image and add a white border around it, adding this simple white border is a great and easy way of adding more contrast between the dark, the light, and even the midtone. Another way of doing this is by adding a drop shadow. Drop shadows should be used sparingly, but when added, you can see how it adds much darker contrast to that overall area. Plus, you can do something that has even both of them, both an outline and a drop shadow. Paying close attention to how this applies to text is especially important. If you've got an image that has a light background, obviously it's better to read text that's darker than that background than it would be to have light text on a light background. Conversely, if you've got dark images and a dark background, then you won't want to have dark text on top of it. Always make the appropriate choice for readability. Now, there are some different ways we'll cover in a different video on how to add more contrast if you just can't be able to add the amount of contrast or pull that contrast from your existing image.